Sometimes rest is not the answer. Now, to be clear, sometimes rest absolutely is the answer. This is the problem that I have been noticing, where we have a whole bunch of people saying that rest is always the answer, and surrender and passivity and taking it easy and ease is the answer all of the time. And then you have another group of people saying that it takes hard work and effort and discipline, and that is the answer all of the time. Really, what I think is that sometimes you need to rest and sometimes you need to put in the work, right? Sometimes ease is the answer, sometimes effort is the answer. And the sooner we learn the delicate dance of figuring out what it is we need right now, oh, that's what makes all of the difference, right? That's what makes all of the difference. So yes, sometimes rest is absolutely the answer, but this particular message is for someone who needs to hear that maybe right now, maybe rest is not the answer that you need. And I'd actually like to share a very specific example or an analogy here, because this is how this lesson was really driven home for me. It was through my own fitness journey, if you will, and how taking up running fixed all of the body problems that I've had for my entire life. And this was actually a total shock to me. Now, some people will laugh and say that this should have been obvious, but it wasn't obvious, and it took me all this time to realize this. So all of my life, I never could run, right? I never could run because I had too many joint problems. I have bad feet. I actually have an issue with my feet where the bones in my feet are not aligned properly, and they kind of hover off the ground a little bit. So all my life I wore orthotic insoles, like custom-made, prescribed, rigid orthotics to keep my feet in place, the bones in my feet in place. And so that was the solution, right? Using the support of an orthotic insole. And I have bad ankles where I always roll my ankles, and I usually wear shoes with ankle support. I have bad knees where I have actually dislocated my right knee over 100 times in my lifetime. I think the technical term is patellar subluxation. So my kneecap slips out of place. And, I always thought, oh, well, I can't run because running is really bad on your knees, and I have really bad knees. They're always slipping out of place, so I better not run. And I have hip problems where my hips clunk when I walk because nothing is ever quite right with my hips. And for the last 10 years or so, I had a mysterious pain in my pelvic floor that just could not be resolved. And it was actually becoming quite debilitating, like sitting was becoming very painful. And then I also had a problem with my spine and my neck, where my spine, I had a reversed curve in my spine. Right? So I know that's a long list of problems, and none of these were really, I was relatively living a normal life, but I just kind of lived with all of these like aches and pains, and my muscular skeletal system just never felt quite right. And I always thought, okay, I have all of these problems with my joints and my bones and all this, and that means I can't run, right? It means I can't run because I have all of these problems. And I don't know what happened. One day I woke up and realized at 35 years old, I need to start running. I can't explain this because I've always hated running. And like I said, I thought it was bad for me to do so because I thought it would damage my joints further, especially my knees and my feet. But I started running. I had not run for 20 years, and I started running. And it was absolutely brutal because at first I could barely run 100 meters, okay? But I just kept at it, and a year goes by and I'm getting much better, and something rather miraculous has begun to happen. After a year of sticking with this, after a year of pounding the pavement and just going through absolute brutality of retraining my body, right? My body had to learn and adapt in so many different ways. I was exposing all of these weaknesses and like strengthening my muscles in so many different ways. And, you know, my body was going through a total transformation. And then after about a year of running, I started to realize that running had cured all of my problems. I'm not kidding a bit. And this is where I know some people will laugh, and somebody could have spared me years of struggle by telling this to me, right? But nobody, I didn't know, right? I didn't know. First of all, my knees were healed. My knee hasn't dislocated since I began running. I don't no longer have any knee pain. I don't have any fear of my knee dislocating. My feet, I no longer need to wear my orthotics, right? I can walk all day barefoot. My feet are so strong, and I haven't gotten new x-rays, but I almost suspect that the running has realigned the bones in my feet, because I can feel that my feet, like my big toe, actually touches the ground when I walk now. My big toe used to not touch the ground when I walk. I actually didn't know that when you walk, your big toe was supposed to be involved. So it's quite interesting. My feet are amazing, and I no longer roll my ankles. I feel grounded, right? I feel grounded. Running strengthened my feet. And this took a year of steady running. This is how, like, this wasn't just a little bit of exercise could have fixed it. This took an entire year of running before, you know, my body transformed this much. And my pelvic floor pain, that was a mystery, it's gone. Cured, mysteriously fixed. And my neck, one day I woke up and my neck cracked, and I felt that my spine had straightened out, and I could I could really, really feel that I was now standing straight, and my neck was no longer at a weird angle. My head was no longer at a weird angle. Everything was proper. And then all of the pain that had been submerged in my lower back from my neck is gone, and it's just incredible. So this is the moral of the story. All my life, I thought that I should not run because of my bad feet, ankles, knees, hips, pelvic floor, and neck and spine, right? I thought all of those problems meant that I shouldn't put in more work and effort and shouldn't experience more intensity, right? So the joke's on me, because putting in the work, the effort, the intensity, and the impact of running, that was what I needed to fix those problems, right? It was a complete reversal. So I used to think that I needed more rest, that my body needed to rest, right, in order to heal. But no amount of rest ever fixed it, right? What I needed was not just the strengthening, but it also, like, the impact of, in my case, running, right, in order to fix all of these problems that I've always had. And now I feel completely brand new. And so running, which I always thought was this horrible activity that would damage my body and destroy my body, and I was afraid of the effort. I was afraid of, you know, how much running sucks. I was afraid of the impact and the stress. But it turned out it was the medicine I needed. Putting in that work and effort and discipline and impact, that was exactly what I needed. It cured my body from my toes to my neck, right? Absolutely incredible. So I've gone on this a little bit at length because I just think it's such a good analogy. And since I have learned this so physically and so viscerally, now I'm constantly looking at other areas of my life and thinking, have I been too passive, right? Have I been resting too much? Have I been avoiding effort? Have I been avoiding stress? Have I been avoiding impact? Have I been avoiding intensity? And if I have, well, what might happen if I tried the opposite approach, right? Sometimes rest is not the answer. To be clear, sometimes rest absolutely is the answer. I don't want this to sound like a message of, I don't want this to be a polarized message, right? I know that this message has been focusing on, like, one way, right? But just to be clear, sometimes rest is still the answer, you know? if you're running and you have an injury from running, rest now becomes the answer. If you break your bone, rest is the answer. If you have a cold, rest is the answer, right? If you have damage or injury or trauma of some way, or if you're burnt out, if you're exhausted, that is when rest is the answer. But sometimes, right, sometimes rest is not the answer. And that's what I really think we need to remember.